Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Mind's Eye Visual Guitar Method. This week's upload, I think you're going to dig it. Totally awesome. Nothing in relation to videos we've done in the past, like our last few lessons have been continuations, although this one will be a part one and part two for each of the two chord progressions in the song. Same loop of chords, but we'll split it in half due to the length. Also, I've recorded this a few times. It ended up being an hour long. I get rambly. I make mistakes. There is a ton of cool things and details I'd like to explain, but I'm going to try to skip over those and just be a little quicker. Get right to the analysis of the song, I guess, with a little less emphasis on analysis because, well, I'm going to be trying to go fast here. So anyways, remember to like and subscribe if you think this is cool, but let's get into it and show you how cool this lesson is going to be. Today we're covering a song that we could not name and cannot say, but you know, copyright strikes and all. So, but there it is on the screen, so maybe you were enticed to click on the lesson, hopefully, because you know the song and you know how cool it is. As for, like, you know, mainly it's a guitar instrumental, and to me it's very impactful. Always been a favorite of mine. Very emotional song. Hopefully you've heard it. If not, give it a listen. And there even is a backing track you can find, because this is not only is it just a great song that I find I can just play over and over and never get sick of. Well, you know how that goes. But it's very elementary in what it can teach you about creating a song with borrowed chords. Where do these chords, where they come from, and how could you handle them in a solo and make everything sound good. We'll also deal with playing over changes, like taking a line and playing it over both chords so it makes sense on two different chords and brings a connection into your playing into the song that you won't get if you just learn the scale right and you try to noodle this song. It's definitely not going to sound as cool and structured emotionally, I think, as this song does. Steve Hackett is the guitarist to be credited here, I believe, playing the solo. So let's get to the chords here. Run through the chords first, and then we'll actually go over the solo. Since there is something to describe on the chords during the description of the solo, let's just go through this a little fast. But it'll helpful to be know, like, a little bit about get the chords down first. What you may want to actually even do with the backing track or with the full track is just learn the chords to the song. It will really, really help you. Other than, you can learn it robotically like I did many, many years ago. And it was always a struggle to play because one scale shape will not work because there's borrowed chords from other keys. And then you're learning it very robotically. You're using a lot of, like, mental memory recall to be like, ooh, this part and this note and not that note, and little things that you have no other context for other than mimicking the solo, which can work, but then you're really not. The problem I found with that is I never connected, and I always still wondered, like, so that was cool, but geez, how could I write something like that? Like, what, and learning, how to make music with diatonic chords and one scale, just the scale, no other ideas about, catering to these movements in the chords, creating lines that'll connect the chords. Just noodling, well, everything sounded like noodling. So, now that, so learning the chords is instrumental to really get in the concept of this song. So let's do that now. So what we got here, and the chords can be a little concept. This is, can be a great lesson in some chord things that are sometimes confusing. For example, this first chord would be listed as GA if I just read the tablature. And in past, I've known, okay, this means like there's a chord over a root note. But then I would get confused, like, well, which one's the chord? Which one's the root note? Am I supposed to play a G with an A chord over it, and then I'm like, that's not the song. So the ultimate point here is use your ear over the tab. That's another thing that this lesson is going to also show. Along with, there's another channel, Art of Guitar, who's also lately been going over tablatures and showing that they'll get you close, but what's ultimately gonna matter? Using your ear. Aside from watching what the guys do live, that's like not what the tab is showing you. So there can be wrong chords, which I found a couple in the tabs. As a matter of fact, right off the bat here, the key, yeah, I searched, hey, what key is Supernatural Anesthetist in to, oh, did I say the name of the title? No, there's one coming now, as he's from the Supernatural, and he's going to make us very numb. I don't know. Okay, so what I found was that all these chords are in the key of D, and the online listing tells you it's in the key of A, and another one tells you it's in the key of G, and you can see why here. Well, simple. Look at the first chord. It's in this song. It's not telling you. They're starting from a cool, ambiguous point and bringing it down into a to the home chord at the very end of the progression. So it's the key of D, in case you wondered. I through my analysis, and you'll see more during the lesson. Why it's clearly coming from the key of D without any question. So, anyways, our first chord here. So as you see here, we have an A root. So when you see G A, it means A with a G chord, an A root note over a G chord, and that can sound complex. You're thinking, well, what am I gonna get? Am I gonna open A? What the? How the? Well, here's what you do to make it simple. Use when you see these roots over chords, simplify the chord. Go for this little triad shape we've been talking about lately in the lessons. And use that as in the diagram, GBD, 3rd fret, 4th fret, 3rd fret, and A. Let's talk a little something about this chord. There is a, it gives a cool sound. Okay, if you analyze the actual notes, it's a root note, and then this is a 6, and then this is a, oh no, this is the, actually this would be the 6. So that's a flatted 7, indicating like a dominant 7th chord, but we don't have a major, but it sounds kind of major, but because we're surrounding the major with suspended notes. We have the 4 and the 2, or the 2 and the 4, something like that. This is the, that's the 2. B is near A, right? And the 4. Okay, so we discussed that we've revealed already we're in the key of D. Well, A is the 5 of D, right? So we have a kind of, if you want to, it may be helpful to think of this in a modal sense. This is not really by any stretch, I think, a modal piece, okay? But there is a modal suggestion here, and it's cool. It's kind of ambiguous, and they're muddying the waters with things by a neat concept here. This A is the 5 of the key of D, so it's kind of suggesting, hey, we're doing something in Mixolydian. We don't know that yet because the rest of the chords haven't played, but because we know that, we can see what's going on here. But this 4, or this G major, would be the 4 of the key of D. 4, 5, 1. 4, 5, 1. You see how those fit? And so what we are in a juxtaposition of Mixolydian and Lydian, because we're suggesting Mixolydian 5 with the 4 chord on top. So there's that cool, some reasons for that cool sound, what the intervals are doing, and what it is suggesting in like an overall modal sense. So cool. One other thing about this chord was This is a problem when I do these lessons off the top of my head. Ideas are coming in while I'm speaking, and then okay. Well, I don't want to sit here and pause and drag the lesson out on something, so it'll come back to me if it was anything important. So, oh yeah, G over A, got it. So when you see that, how can you remember that when G over A? So you can think like, even though, see, my common thinking is looking at the guitar fretboard, my mind is focused in this real time thinking where that sort of doesn't make sense because the A is above, toward the ceiling, and the G chord here is towards the floor. So that says it's kind of sounds like it's talking backwards, but in your mind's eye visual that you may be, starting to use more to play this instrument to try to not, you know, make that more of an unconscious thing, that this reality thing, and just go from what you know in your mind. You can think, okay, G is above the A, much like in the diagram here. I'm pointing at my screen. So much like the diagram here, there's A is down and the G is on top. All right, moving on. So we just really sink down one note to get to the next chord in the progression, which is going to be... And there's our strumming pattern, which I have to be very careful of because it will instantly say, hey, we recognize that as... Because that song just really starts with just that guitar strumming. Oh, by the way, that guitar, these will work on your 6-string guitar, but this was done on a 12-string guitar, explaining that really lush richness of the chord. But you don't have to worry about the, you're missing notes, or you're not getting the exact tonality of that 12-string, because a 12-string just doubles up the notes, for the most part, octaves and doubling up, with just a light explanation. So there's no extra notes. There are no bigger music theory picture that's happening. It's just the same chord. It just sounds really lush on that 12 string. So anyways, so it comes back again, and you get to the vocal part. Here come the do 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 do, I need to do. And if he wants you to do something, all you have to do is do something else. And he's very good at dancing. So we've gotten to that point. We are on this chord here, but that was another way to conceptualize this chord. By the way, this is B minor over A. So you can see, like, if you had just tried to figure these chords out and then you looked at them, you think, well, this is this is an A, but this is weird. Where's this F sharp coming? He's playing a 6, 4, 2 chord. It's and there's, you could go like, well, this is the, comes from the this and the this, and the over conceptualize it, or maybe in a concept that maybe you latch onto. But there are ways to really over conceptualize this stuff, or talk about this in ways that you won't understand, or become too complex to just get through simply. Simple way is the B minor over A chord. And you say, well, Mark, what B minor? What are we talking about here? But look at this shape here. Sounds alien with the A. Sounds actually very pretty with the A, but you can think about this. The bar chord. And then just removing that. And then just doing this. And then singing Sweet Madam Blue. Oh, sorry, we're not doing that song. That was some other kind of band. Okay, so we're gonna look in the looking glass here and move down. Now, see, I ruined the lesson. Now I got another song in my head. All right, that's definitely cool, but not as cool as this song, I don't think. Sorry, Sticks. Okay, so we got an A6 next, and this chord is really cool because as you round through the, we got to get, we've gone through the lyrics, when it says such a fine dancer, it's got this A6, and then the drums in a pop, pop, and we got a drum beat with the chords. And it just works as a nice kind of, brought us somewhere that when we get back to the initial A, it's just really cool. So there's that. And that's the chord that you want to play right there. And you do want to know that because there is some slight, nuances here to these chords. They're all pretty close to each other, so they make a difference in the part of the song that they're playing. As we move on here, the next chord is just going to go down to an easy A. Kind of normalizes things, but it also does something really cool. This A is now the full 5 chord of D, but maybe not totally full 5 chord, because remember the A in has its importance in the key of D as the 5 chord. Very, very important chord in music, and it is going to come up later in the lesson, but we are not indicating that G, the flat 7, we are just playing A. And there's a great reason for that, because when we do that, it leaves the doors open. The more you identify where you are in a scale, the more you've pigeonholed yourself, or given yourself, more specific options to what can happen next. So if I was playing that A5, I might be able to jump keys to, say, as the 5 of 5 or something, but we're in the key that we're in as the 5 of 5. So don't worry about that. So like for those who know about the substituting 5 chord to change keys, but that not no. Okay. So we are on this A, and that leaves the door open because maybe this A is actually the 4 of another key. I mean, we're not suggesting it as, anything else. It could be, right? Could be the 1 of A major. Could be the 4 of E. Could be the 5 chord of D. Who knows? And that makes sense because it's about to go to a chord that is pulled from another key, and it can get there super easy, super deceptively, just in that nature alone, because this chord progression is acceptable in another key. So it can work. There'll be a nice seamless transition from this chord to this chord that's coming from another key. 2 other things. If the band, I'm now thinking, let's going out on a limb here a little bit, but you can almost go to any other chord you want. There's no theory police that say this must happen, but you say, oh well, it'll sound bad. Well, it's not that it sounds bad, it's just that the chord you chose may not be the idea that you wanted, but there's an idea there, and if the band moves the melody line and the bass and all within the context of the beat, all shift on a beat to a different place, I believe that it's acceptable to transition anywhere, and just thinking that. Excuse me. But another thing would be just be using things that make sense. Oh, and so then the second thing would be, you could also, if you wanted to like come up with like a gimmick, an explanatory gimmick of this, you could say, okay, well, let's think here. In the key of D that we were just in, this A is the 5, so it's the next chord, the 6. But it's just would be suddenly boring, diatonic, expected. So that's not gonna be what the song's about. The song's about being emotionally surprising. So we need a trick there. What our gimmick could be that it is possible to replace a 6 chord, and you could probably do this with any minor chord in the scale. Replace that minor chord with a 5 to jump out of that key, and maybe jump out and go somewhere else, or jump out and jump back, like this song. And so, that being said, that could be a kind of a method to the madness. And you could ask right there, well, Mark, how can you tell us how that even works? I mean, can I just use this? Put a 7 chord anywhere? And you almost can, but one reason it would work over a minor chord is because that dominant 7th chord, as we've explained in just very previous videos, is like a major chord that's using the 7 that's normally associated with minor chords. All minor chords that are in the diatonic key, the 2, the 3, and the 6, all have a flat 7. But only one of the major chords has this flat 7, that dominant, which is one of the reasons it's got that unique and that functionality that it gets. So that being said, that's another reason that this substitute will work, because it's, well, like a minor chord with a major third. We just kept it major instead. So, and it kind of gives it this uplift to it, which we will go over when we are. We'll notice is another concept right within the lines of the solo. So that being said, there's that chord. Now, what do you know? So we got to kind of, instead of going away into a whole new key, we're coming back to the original key. What better way to come back to the original key than to go solidly straight for the 1 chord, to be like, yeah, okay, no, don't worry. We only went away for a little bit. We'll put you out there on the cliff a little bit. Now you're back to some safe ground. Then we're going to go away again for just another. All these chords last 2 bars. So there's a weird strumming pattern that doesn't make it sound like 2 bars, which is another cool thing about the song. But and we'll go over the strumming pattern just at the end of this. But we have the just this regular D chord, and you know what that is. We know what the intervals are, so we don't have to go over this too much. But it is helpful to note that with this D chord, we're going to have it's a 1 of the scale, so it's going to have that regular 7. And that's going to come up. That's going to be very handy to use when we're soloing. So if we're kind of walking over the chord tones, we don't sound too predictable, like kind of cooler to go. Alright. So there's that. And you can see how that that B will go right into the. Well, it's kind of weird actually that progression works, because it's like now we're in the key of E, and that's the 5 chord of the key of E, right? So you would think that we could go back to E major. Sorry, that would be this. You can see, because we're see, I had to work your ear into B5, just B5, and then you can hear the resolution to the 1. The sounds okay, but our tonality had been in D. It didn't sound so great, because if we resolve to that D, it's got an interesting way that it works really cool, and I'm going to show you a little chord loop here that'll nail that idea down. But it works cool, but it's odd because it's a it's almost like you're playing a flat 7 major in the key that you're going to, instead of what would be like the diminished would be a half step up. Some people are following that. If you don't worry about it. But so it's weird that if you are into explaining everything in a theory context, that's a trick, because it's kind of not it's weird how that works. Not sounds diatonic, sounds totally awesome, but you're like, well, hey, that's not a normal diatonic thing happening there. Must be some kind of trick. So it is. I looked it up and I learned it yesterday, and I can't remember all the methods that make it work, but other than it's like if you play it down here with that little D-shaped chord on 4-3-2, you can see you're just losing 1 note to get back to that D. So there's a very real close relationship there, also as well, that makes that work. And you may have a force field and something in a black sedan, and you're playing fast forward just as long as you can, but you won't be something because you're a digital man. Plays fast forward on another copyright, cause you're playing Rush in the middle of the night. Oh, I was just dreaming or something. I don't May the gods will forgive me. All right, so yeah, cool, right? I hope you knew that band. We were rushing through those chords, if you know what I'm saying. But awesome song. Probably a little Genesis influence there, maybe, but who knows? Just a great, probably just a well-known musical trick that they took advantage of. Okay. While everyone else is just like, how does Russ make Pentatonic? We're going to be a rock band with Pentatonic. Because I learned 2 solos. Why don't we sound like Rush? Okay. Sorry. That's the things I do that make me want to re-record these lessons, but I'll leave it in. Okay. So we go away from there, but we are going away with a version of this A7 chord. So we've, totally doable, but it works really cool with this against the D7 here, because we're keeping this D in the chord. And you can hear that, that sounds real good with. It's just very compatible, a very slight change from the actual A5 chord. So, you can see how that totally will work. And so we go back as the very last chord in the progression before it turns around and plays one more time in the song, and then we're out of there. That's another great thing. It's just a pretty quick and easy song to learn. So we go back to the D. And with that, we're going to go into 2 more chords, but I call this part of the solo the turnaround, and here's why. Both chord progressions have this bit, but in the second half, it's trimmed down a little bit. And the solo does the same thing over these 2 chords to kind of signify we're at the end, and it either leads us back to the second loop of chords, so it leads us right back to the start, like a turnaround, gets us back to the beginning of the music. It also, at the very end of the song, leads us to the other resolve. We go someplace completely different that totally resolves well with the end chord and gives us the ending of the song. So this is why I call this part the turnaround chords. Thereby leading you to understand, other things about chord progressions. There may be something you do at the end that is in there as with a purpose in the structure. The end, user just sitting back and enjoying the music will usually not, for the most part, not pick up on that, but you'll know what you compose there. So now, in the tablature, it does say C sus. You can play that. It does sound good in the song. When I listen to the backing track, though, I listen to make sure it was C sus. And what I really heard was this E ringing out the entire time. The third of that C chord. So I play C major there. Your choice. Choice is yours. But if you want the gray notes show the suspended sound. Alright, so that plays 4 times. And then we go to the now we have to talk a lot about this during the solo, so I think I'll leave the big talk for that. But we go down to this chord. You can clearly follow the bass at that point. You followed it. You were on the D, went to the A for a second, back to the D, and then we fell to the C that we just were discussing, and then the root movement goes to the B. So we're inclined to think that this chord is a B chord, and it's listed in the tablature as B diminished. So it's like as if when we fell to the C chord, we'd gone into C major. Not totally necessarily, not really. What he does in the solo is use some notes that will work over the key that we were just in, D, and there's a couple notes that'll still work over the C, and he has a really sparse line, makes great use of just these 4 notes, and then plays a note that'll carry us over into this chord, stepping down. So, but it's not B diminished is the point here. I listen and listen. I can not even closely hear a B diminished chord in there, but albeit it's very, very muddy at this time. The only thing I could really pick up is that it definitely went down to that B. So then when I got the chord, did more research, did a lot more listening, I got this. So it can look like, okay, gee, that must be a B augmented because it's got this sharp fifth. Like, where, what's the theory behind where that would come from? How would anybody know that? Here's some simple things. First of all, when it's really about listening to the song further, because there's one more chord idea, but the solo stops. You're done. Is just one more chord thing happens to get to the turnaround, and when you hear that, that's the key that makes sense of all of this. But you don't get it right here while you're playing the. That's all it plays over this chord. This thing. Sorry. And if we hear those, listen to this. Those notes actually sound really pretty over both of those chords. So that's one of the methods to the madness right there. But it's only this C chord is only dropping one note. Look at the C in the root there in this chord. Everything stays the same, but these just go down one step. So that's a really easy way to just go, oh, that's doing that. But what really is it? Let's go with that. Maybe this is a root over a chord thing, especially when you get some weird chord spellings, because you got the sharp fifth in there. Is this an augmented chord? If you play that 5 way up high, is this a flat 13 chord? I mean, yeah, and somebody might go on, oh, this is, is he like the flat 13, or is this a jazz idea and this and that, and that's cool too. But very simply, do you recognize that? That's an E minor chord all day. That's an E minor triad. There's our E minor root. Okay, so we've got a B over, with a stretch. It's a stretchy chord there. And you can stress a little bit if you take this top. That's why I showed the other 5 there on the high E string. If you just eliminate that and play it up here, you can do this D minor shape. Now, this is probably why, at this moment, the tablature will say this is an E over a D minor chord. It is not. But you can see here, look at the shape. That's a D minor shape. There's a good chance that either A, some electronic, chord thing some computer was trying to figure out these chords based on what they were hearing, what the melody was playing, and it might have confused it. Or another good chance is that a common thing with 12-string guitarists is that they'll tune the guitar down a whole step, and that's going to skew where these chord positions are. And if they were playing a shape, but the shape was in a different spot on the guitar, they may have looked and said, ooh, okay, that's D minor on quick look, not realizing that their guitar's tuned down a whole step. I don't know, but that's a possibility that could have made that, somebody think really quick, okay, that's E over D minor. But I don't hear that at all. What I do hear is that now, by the way, you'll see, let's look at the writing here. Says the second turnaround, you go to the final chord, F minor, and we're going to go, the solo is just we'll go to that note and it'll end right there. But we'll talk about that on the second lesson. So if we're in between, in the middle of the song, we're still going to go with one more chord before the final piece begins again, before Finnegan will begin again. So that means that we're going to look at what this next chord is here, and if you notice, it's the same exact chord. What did we do? We added the E down there, and that's going to make perfect sense because it gets really dark at that point. So at first it's like, it's gone from this. just bring that lower E in to really meet up that chord and make it mean and scary. And so now with that low E root, it's clear. It's just, this is all day long an E minor chord. Is kind of, we were traveling there, so we did here. And here's another way you could explain this. Then once you realize, okay, so we're kind of traveling to E minor. So this was actually an inversion of an E minor. We were starting on the B note, which would be, let's see, the 5. So this would be the 1 3 5. This is what's the third inversion of an E chord, but. I didn't think about all that stuff. Just it was a B over an E, and we know where it may have came from. And just very simply, even if it didn't come from anywhere or doesn't come from a certain key or whatever the deal is, it worked because we just put the octave down a half step, while the rest of the chord stayed the same. As half step movement is good voice leading, as far as I understand. So we're on that. Chord, and the final thing is here is listen for the final. It goes wow 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 wow, and we stab into the beginning chord of the next piece. So it goes, and that's just we went down an E minor chord. We arpeggiated an E minor chord from the top down. So I mean, just another clue that we just got to this E minor point. And then we go, it stabs that to get right back into the piece. And what chord do we stab there? What do you know? It is A7. Pretty awesome. That's a big clue that, hey, we're starting on that 5 of D again, just like we did in the beginning of the song. And it goes, that's that part. So speaking of that, let's get into the actual solo really quick before I pull this lesson into another hour thing that was supposed to be 15 minutes. Not happening. Not with this great piece of music. So now here, just a little description of the strumming pattern. When you see that it's in 10-8, you're going like, because you kind of want to understand the rhythm and where the changes are, so that you can understand where there's a couple of these chords that will only play for 1 bar. And most of them are playing for this 2 bars. And when they do play over this 2 bars, they use another device that is making this, giving this such some elementary lines here. This psychedelic feeling is the way that these chord strumming is crawling over the beat of the song. It's not really following the beat at all. That would be too normal, right? And it's giving this kind of slinking or waves effect. But anyways, it's that's why it's listed in 11-8, and you're going 11-8. How the hell do you do that? But it's really just we were going 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4. I only played 2 stabs at the end, but it's apparently 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 11 1 2 3 4. Oh, that's how I'm gonna play that, because we'll get in trouble. Here, maybe I'll play a different chord. 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 1 2 3 4. You get it. All right. So that's how that's working. Let's get into the solo now that we know those chords so well. Now, so this first chord happens when we get into the music, and here is our D major shape. We can be the whole song. If you want, you can play it across, learn it across your fretboard, especially the way the tab is telling you, all this whole thing here. Maybe you feel better doing that. I don't know. But you can play it all in a shape, in an area, in you can understand where it's all coming from, how these notes in this one shape will work, and sometimes when there's another note, why it's suddenly there, because we'll see where the key center moves, or the shape moves based on the change of key center for those borrowed chords. Let's move on. So here we have what we might know as basically this is a pentatonic shape. We've got the gut notes in there that make this the what we might call, if we start from here, the E Dorian shape. Just as a name, we don't have to think about that as any kind of modal concept. We just want to know the name. You see, it kind of has a minor sound. Pausing, my computer suddenly froze up there, so I think we're back to normal, but it's acting up, so I got to get through this. Okay, because I did an hour long, I made a change, did an hour long video yesterday, and it worked out great, but then I made like a bunch of mistakes when I replayed it, so I'm like, I can't release that. So yeah, but it's now got the problem back. I think it's a little bit, it's getting, I shouldn't have left it on all night. That was my mistake. So we got the first. So it occurs in this big master shape, but this is all we're using. And why does it work? We're starting on an A note. Cool. So there's that. Let's get on to the next chord, because we do want to move through this a little quick. We got this. This next chord happens. We've just lowered down the A, and this is our shape expands to this. Although, at this moment, we're only going to need that E note. The F note's coming up on next time around this chord hits. So I'm not going to go through and exactly explain all of this stuff in too much detail, because that's just going to take us forever. And I'm going to leave it for you guys to do your homework, as to go through this and go, oh, okay, that's probably why this works. So I can see the line here started on A, and it ended on A. Even though we went to that, we went 4A, then we were back to our original chord, and we go same thing. And then now we're back on the B minor over A. The second time around, we end it the same way, but we use that F sharp instead to give it some cool interest. And now we're on to bigger and better things. We gotta arpeggiate this A6 that's coming up. So how does he do that? In the same shape, the same pattern, but this is all you have to think of. And when I calmed my mind down and say, okay, so all this is coming from, now I know where this is coming from, and now I know all these little core places I need to be. This made this solo much easier for me to play, because now I see in my mind's eye, okay, this is what I need. When the chord hits the ear, all I need is this shape. But I need to dance like he did. He went. So what did we do there? He started on the 3, a great note to start a new chord on. We fell down to a stepping note, and then we went 2. We got back in to sounding like we're catering to the chord by getting into the 5 and landing on the what? The 1 again. Pretty awesome, because we're still, got that A root, so A is still the 1, but a little bit different. So the riff was a little different in the choices that we used. You wouldn't want to use that 4 right there, because you're on a major chord. And check out this thing. Here's another thing you'll learn in this lesson: how, in many practical ways, the 4 is not generally used, in this song at least, on the major chord. So you can kind of see the old rule: avoid the 4 when, and you're always confused about that, because people just state it blankly. It's very non-specific, and you're like, well, wait a minute, the 4 sounds good here, it doesn't sound good there. What is the real reason here that you wouldn't want to use the 4? And it's basically, what I'm finding out, is a thing over major chords. And this is going to come up really quick here in a second. If you use the pentatonic scale, say you use major pentatonic, it's telling you the reason why. Right in the major pentatonic. A major pentatonic has a root, a 2, a 3, no 4, then it's got a 5 and a 6. So you've got the 1, 3, 5, 6 and a 2. The most congruent steps are what they give you. The 4 is going to not only kind of tends to smooth out the sound and give it a sense of normalcy, but what it's also doing, what the 4 and the 7 do, are pigeonhole you into your scale. Those are saying we're definitely here. The pentatonic, as a framework with the chord tones and 2 steps, gives you an outline that allows you freedom of direction. Nobody seems to ever tell anybody this. But that would be, like, to me, the biggest method behind the madness of where did pentatonic come from? Why is this group of notes useful? Who thought of this? What's going on? You know, these are some of the huge reasons, and you can see it right in the song as we progress here. So we need another lick over this A6, and look at that. Do you see a pentatonic? Do you see what I see? Distortion there on the guitar, but yeah, a pentatonic scale right there. What do you know? And we're still over the so we're gonna go down that pentatonic on the yellow notes are what we need. The 2 and the 3 there are coming up, the gray notes there, but right now we need this, but we are gonna just fly up the scale very normally in a second, but right now we need a little bit of a roundabout way to get down. And look at what he did here. He went here's the lick. There's a lot to that right there. It kind of works in like this circle here, or like a little bucket. Made like an upside down U shape. 5, 1, 6, 3. And then when I was learning this, I made this. It was kind of rushing up to me, and I was like, how am I going to remember this lick? It's a finger twister. When you get here, it's like. It's just weird how it moves, which I like. I want to learn these new ways to move that break me out of my old habits. And so I consider that like an X. We go from the 3 to the 2, and then the 5 to the 1. You can see there's it's making like I'll use my cursor here, not my finger. 3 to 2 is going that way, 5 to 1 that way. It's just kind of tying a lace on the top of this box. It's kind of weird, or making an X pattern. Or a pretzel, or whatever way you want to think about it, but that's the way to get that down under your fingers real quick, and not have to think about that. A finger twister. Another thing to look at here is when you get to that 2, 2, 5, 5, 1. Hey, that's probably why that wraps up so good. Did you pick it up? 2, 5, 1. Common. Not necessarily the same. I mean, it's the same. It's the same root progression as a 2-5-1 in jazz. We're not, playing a real 2-5-1 in any jazzy kind of way, but it's still there for and working, I think, along the same lines there. So notice at this point, you don't need to see a half corner of my head anymore. Let's get this camera on my guitar here. All right, so we've got the. Now we're going to go, and that is the moment. When you hit that 1, you also should know that is the moment that the chord changed from the A6 to the regular A. And this is going to work perfect because we are now clearly and totally arpeggiating that A with the cool step notes and none of the pigeonhole tones, which is what I call them, because like we said, the 4 and the 7 would lock us into that scale, but we know that B chord is coming up. We're going to be jumping out of the scale, so do we need the 4 and the 7 at this moment? Hell no. So you want to avoid those. What's an easy way to avoid those without having to be like, I need a scale that... Well, if you need a scale that avoids those notes, pentatonic is what you do. So... Now, it sounds like he even doubles up on it. He goes back a little bit, 1 string, and then starts again. But that, then we got that is over the B chord, that little part there, and it totally works. Now, let me also tell you this. This line, from that A, this line starts moving up. It's just like, it's really cool because from that root, what a pentatonic seems to do to me is just kind of like the root is the stem, and that's where the proverbial blossom opens up with all those notes. When you just play them straight up like that, where just really something is blossoming, and then it's suggesting something growing up. Our movement is upward, so we got this new chord progression that's definitely a step upward, as if we're going from a 4 now to a 5. So see, we went from the 5 chord. It doesn't occur, the change from a 5 to a 4 chord doesn't occur there, but it leaves it open for that to have been a 4 chord, which is going to work perfectly with our trick to go into the B dominant 7 chord. And sometimes you'll hear me misspeak when I'm rambling. I'll say the 5 chord or dominant 7 chord. I mean the same thing. But an A5, we all know that would be like none of that in here. All right, so and I played an E or something. So we're moving on from there. We went all the way up. We've discovered our I don't scroll, I click. We discovered our B5 chord. And so if you see up here, you can see the scale where this came from. If you notice, everything, because if you're wondering, like, how can you get away with playing the same notes when this is coming from a different key? Well, our key, if you notice, you see our Dorian pattern here. Look at what it did. It moved up a whole step. So here it is. Let me get this lined up right here. So we got, just watch the scale shape. Watch it walk up a little bit there. You can do that by looking at the big square of notes here. So I'm going to say you're following along and you know what's going on. So now we have our trying to shoot. This is just, if in case you want to know, you can pause it here. Look at this. These are the the normal notes of that scale, 1 through 7, and then our chord tones that we're dealing with at the moment from the B indicate that we're on the 5 of this E. Of course, it's this flat 7 chord. It's suggesting that all day long, but it's just a cool thing that we can use within the context of this D major idea that we're still feel that we're in. So we went when we got to the 5, we turned back to on this page we start at the 5, 2, and we go flat 7. Do you get that? So we go from flat 7. We're using that 2 as a step, and we're hammering back to the 1. So basically this lick, when it goes over that, he just needs a couple of notes to sound right over that chord and to do something cool. And so he does something simple, where a hammer on. But the main notes in this little piece are, we're just saying flat 7 1, flat 7 1, flat 7 1. You're screaming out, you're catering to this chord, point blank. That's what's going on there. And what I think is amazing is all these lines, they sound really, the solo to me sounds like this really angular, far out, progressive, cool thing. And it's like, but he's doing that, they're accomplishing this with really elementary chord soloing, chord tone soloing. It's just really cool, and it's just very, very elementary. Just saying, hey, this is the chord. So now you're wondering about that 5 right here. That's exactly where we get into the D note here, the D chord, sorry. And with a D note, no. Yeah, I screwed something up there. I didn't screw anything up, but I just kind of misspoke there. Let's go back a little bit. So I guess I carried that 5 over from our... Oh. So, anyways, that's the riff right there. We end this part. It's very similar. This happens in the second part of the song, and sometimes when you're learning it, some of those, the part for the next chord is what I might be hearing in my head because it's a very similar lick. But at this part, it's going. And now we gotta jump up and grab that D. Now, why are we grabbing a D when 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 we're in a chord with a D sharp? How does that work? But that's the exact beat where the D chord shows up, so that works right there. And I also remembered earlier I discussed that I mentioned that there was some theory behind why that does resolve to D, which seems to be weird. There's, that's not in standard diatonic music theory. How is a B7 chord also resolving to this other chord? Well, that's another magic of 7 chords because they're related to the diminished chord, and diminished chords have all kinds of resolves possible because of voice leading and tones moving it to half steps. But let me tell you this. This is important, a great learning tool right here. It's the tritone. And now think of the word we're using. Fives are a little tense, and we're moving towards resolve. Let's take that word apart. Resolve. We're going to resolve. What are we solving again? Well, before we got to the 5, chord tones were playing nice with each other. There was no tritone. Now we've got a tritone, and what we're trying to do is solve that tritone. This your mind wants to break that up. Don't like it. It's okay in that chord, but it's there. So, how can you solve a tritone? Well, a half step away. There, see, just if I remove that note there, you've got now basically a root 5 situation. I can go there, solve it that way to that chord. I can solve it that way, I can solve it this way to a chord with that in it, maybe. Who knows? But there's very loosely described here. You want to solve the condition of that tritone, and in this case, when we go down like that, we've got that. We solve it by with the it's the top of a D chord, so the rest of the D chord's going to work. Probably could even go. I don't know, maybe it could go D minor, but it sounds better as D major. Probably because, oh yeah, duh, this note is staying the same, the F sharp. So notes stay the same, but there's a solved tritone, and that's why that works. So anyways, now another thing, we discussed the using the regular 7 over the 6 over the D chord, but also keep an eye out for this 6. It happens a lot. And when we talked about, we started our last lick, we went to here, and it continues. This is the part where you're learning a line that connects 2 chords, especially with this little music theory thing going on. There's, this is not a diatonic chord change, but it's a chord change that works and is cool. That's solving the tritone. So when you're just playing right over it, so we get to the 1 to get right into that chord tone solidly, and then I think that affords us the ability to end on a tone that's maybe not so usual. Instead of ending on the 5 or the 3 or the 1, we goes, and he's ended on the 6 right there. And then we go, so he goes, what's then it walks up the thing scale again. There's our riff. 3, 5, 6, 7, 3, 7, 5. Now, so there's that walk down, including the 7, which sounds more hip. I'm going to walk down, I'm going to change that, and we'll see the D shape, or you should visualize the D shape here. I'm going to play this note where the plus sign is instead of the 7, so the riff would sound like, that sounds just cheesy, boring. So these are little things you can do to the tiniest little trick to know to, and to show you just how one note change can make your turn your riff from okay, why'd you do that to hey, that was kind of hip and progressive. Now, granted, we also used we didn't go. I mean, if you had included that one, going to the one, then it might have made more sense. But it gives it a different emotion. This little sweet bluesy thing to me that sounds like that maybe we wouldn't want right there. We would just want some kind of more, a little bit progressive sounding. We're gonna leave it like that. All right, so just a couple more chords here to go. Now we got this A7 sus comes up. So now we've got that 4 in there. And weren't we just talking about not playing the 4? So why is the 4 going to be allowed here? Well, because the chord is the chord itself is suggesting that 4 as a very important note we talked about, as it's you want to kind of make the line sound kind of the same lines to work, and it gives it this cool bluesy sound versus just going right back to the 5 chord from 1 to 5. It's kind of that would be a little too normal for the song, and this has better voice kind of connecting to the D chord. So we're on this. We got 2 bars of this. And it allows notes from the same structure to sound really cool because he's choosing not to noodle. He's focusing on the chord tones. So right at that part it goes. Once again, he's really saying flat 7. We are very specifically dealing with the 5 chord here of this key of D. Step 1 7. There's that 1 7 again. And there's that 4 5, this excusable 4 to 5. Now why? This is a major chord, remember. We've suspended a major chord. We know that, in the key it would have that major third, and now we're up on the D though with the 4. And that gives it the, that's why a 4 is going to sound good over in a major. Now let's also think about okay, no. I misspoke. So that blows that theory out of the water. This is why I need to script my lessons, because then I end up saying stuff that luckily I caught it in the lesson, and I'm not watching this back going, oh my god, I got to do another hour lesson. Okay, so this is a major chord. So as a techno, that's why it works, is because we're catering to the actual tone. If this was a minor chord, then the 4 would be a little more excusable because a 4 is in the pentatonic scale. Now think about a minor pentatonic. Root, minor third, 4 5 7 1. So minor does the opposite. A minor keeps in the 4 and the 7 because the 7 is always the same with minor. There is no shifting of a 7, so you can have a 7 in there, and it's in conjunction with the 4, leaving the 2 and the 6 out. And because the 4 is more usable as a step with the minor, because it's not adjacent or next door to the third. See, when you're playing the 4 when the chord is a major and it's got a root and a major third, that 4 is a half step away, and it also will be clashy per se. All right, but and we can see here there's no third. That would actually probably would be definitely like, oh, okay, I really can see that as the method here, that a 4 is wide open, because we're basically using it like a third. There's no third playing that it's going to clash with, and that's when a 4 is going to be like totally a great step with a major. That's why. And It's just a step. It's just quick. Probably over-explain that a little bit, I guess. But, um, helpful to know in compositional type things. So then we get back to the D, and we're back to that original lick, but this time over a D chord, so it's got a cool sound. And we're ready to exit the song. However, yeah. Because we went D, we did that part, and then we did the A7 chord, arpeggiated that, and then all you have to worry about is the initial lick over that D chord, and we are at that turnaround. So now everything is going to fall to that C. So for an instant, it's going to kind of like be in the key of C. Now, how can that work? Once again, you can see our master pattern scale had to change to be suggest the key of C, but it really didn't, because look at what he does here. But the key of C is not in the key of D, so it is kind of like this must have come from another key, and a great way to explain how a D can move down to a C and sound pretty natural and coherent doing it without it's not a really jarring change, it's just a cool change. It's not really taking us too far away. It's because those are closely related keys. The key of C and the key of D are going to share 5 notes together. And it's just the same way the other key that we borrowed from moved up a whole step. This one moved down a whole step. Both whole step movements always share 5 notes. Moving a scale to a note to a root a fifth or a fourth away from your original key shares 6 notes. So those are the 4 most common keys that you'll find regular songs borrow chords from, as far as I've seen. Hotel California. Well, that's actually, we already did that anyways, and we don't want to mix up that explanation. All right, so it was harmonic minor in that song, but okay, or harmonic major, I don't know, but it's with something. But you can see the riff, the actual solo is just using something very easy, and I consider this, even though it's only these 3 notes, as part of this. You just went to another pentatonic idea that was in the area at the time, this pentatonic from E minor. And you might say, well, how does E minor pentatonic relate to C? Well, you don't really have to go that deep. You can just see he used the 5, 3, 2, so we 5 chord tone, step, step. So he went step, step, chord tone, step, step, chord tone. All the basics without the root. Pretty ingenious. And then the chord changes right from there as he hits this note that I left with the asterisk in it, because you have an asterisk here if you play the wrong note. But no, that's not the reason. The asterisk there gets us over that chord change to that B that we discussed. That was very disgusting. No, it wasn't disgusting. It was murky at that point, but we know that the C falls down to that B, but we're not playing a B weird chord. We're just an inversion of the E that we're going to get to. When this happens, and so once again, we discussed the key change a whole step apart. So it's like 4 or 5 again. So we went almost as if that D major 1 chord magically turned into a 5 chord and allowed us to fall down to a 4 chord very easily, providing a whole new emotional environment at that time, and an emotional surprise too. And without even you realizing that this is the turnaround, because this is the same lick that you'll learn. All the other licks are different the next time around, but these are the same over these 2 chords. So we go. I can nail the right chord. It is a tricky fingering. Now that's not, you could actually play this. Put that note in there, and that would actually be more congruent with the note that we hit to What would that be over an E? Like a 7. Okay, that makes more sense then. So it's like we hit the flat. We went in on the flat 7. Definitely a heady chord tone to choose over that chord. But if we know as composers that this is actually in related more to E minor than it is to something to that B root we just slid down to, we know why that would work. So that gets us over to here in our not be diminished, dang it, chord. And you can see here if we consider it E, now the intervals make more sense of this. And all we're playing is with these 3 notes is simple, and it sounds cool. But it's a instead of it being wow, he's in on the 2 and then there's some weird chord tones to choose there, but it's really choosing the more sensible flat 7, flat 3, and our 4 is our stepping stone. It's in minor chord, so our 4 not being necessarily in the chord is still an easily excusable stepping note. And you can hear how it's bookending the chord tones. And we're done there right as this thing goes into that the chord sweeps to the low E. Yeah, so it's and the keyboard comes in for that arpeggio sweep right down the E minor chord. And just that sounds so beautiful to get right back into that. We've kind of gotten lost here, so to speak, compositionally, but not really, because from that E, we can get right back into an A. We've heard how well that works in the song Breathe by Pink Floyd, E to A, so common. So we can jump, we stab that, and when we play the initial lick, we're playing that 4. That just always sounds so good with the in a dominant 7 over a dominant chord. Going to the 5 and back. So that is this guy right here. And 3, 4, 5, 4, 3. Now I don't list that as the 2 because that is exactly where we will get on the next part into the back to that beginning chord, and you can hear what did we land on there? Root 3, 5 of our G, even though it's over an A root, and we would consider that, well, we were thinking, well, it's based on the A root, that's actually a 2, blah, 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 but you can even think of it as getting in on the 3 of that chord that's playing. So I'm going to leave you with that. And until next week, maybe you can figure out the rest of the song until then, but we'll, maybe in the middle of the week or something, I'll wrap this up, get a little extra lesson out for next week. I think that would be kind of cool. And if you think that's cool, and if you learned a whole bunch of cool stuff and just thought the song was great to learn, check out, think about the things you can do to help the channel out. What initially helps the channel out is this algorithm stuff. So, like, subscribe, hit the notification, all that stuff that everybody always says. And then check out the merch store below. Even before that, if you're like, hey, I'd like to just throw you directly a dang $1 because that was so cool. Or enough to buy a coffee, which I think is like $8 today. No, it's not that much, but you know how coffee is a little expensive. So throw a coffee donation in our link for Buy Me a Coffee. That always helps. There are subscription costs that I'd like to cover to keep this channel running. And A merchandise store. I totally always upload shirts. Sometimes they're just random designs, not really related to this channel, but there are some cool mind's eye guitar themed shirts there that with a really cool kind of concept there. We've got an eye and a brain, and it's usually got somebody's playing a guitar, and I try to make it so it's on the shirt, not as a square image, but just as its own little thing. And get one of those shirts and show me how it's. Well, you can't upload pictures here, I guess, so that wouldn't work. But um, leave in the comments. Tell me if you got a cool shirt down there. They're reasonably priced. It's all T-Public, reputable T-shirt site. Get coffee mugs, wall tapestries, and remember, you got a cool music studio. You want some cool pictures on. How about a giant mind's eye guitar for the wall of your studio, right? Let me know if you want a different color background because I can change that on some of these designs. All right. Thank you very much. Have a great day. Stay tuned for part number 2, and we are out of here for today. I wish you all the best and happy trails on your guitar fretboard. See you soon.